Thanks, Caroline, and thanks again to the Middle East Institute for inviting me to speak. I have a special fondness for Wendy Chamberlain, whom I've been on panels with on Pakistan, and we've engaged on a range of issues, and it's amazing to see what she's done with the Middle East Institute and everything that Kate Seeley has done for this program, which I think was simply phenomenal. The theme of rethinking the Middle East, I think, is very important. And what I want to do is spend maybe 10 minutes. We want to try to be brief because we're running a little bit behind, talking about three main things. One, where are we heading into the December review, both in Afghanistan and Pakistan? And I'm sure the other panelists will fill in, will dispute certain issues, or will agree. Second, I'll highlight what I think is a very weak link in the Afghanistan component of our strategy. Third, talk about some challenges ahead in Pakistan. First, where are we? And I think it's important to look at this particular phase, call it a surge, call it what you will, as a phase of intensified resources. And if you want to divide the present and the period that started with 9/11 into three phases and where I think we're heading, I think you could talk about three distinct phases. From 2002 to 2008 in both Afghanistan and Pakistan, a period of not so benign neglect. Starting in 2002, where much of our resources, attention, and time were diverted by the war in Iraq. And you can see this and the effect of this in Afghanistan, of leaving the mission unaccomplished, the steady growth of the Taliban insurgency since 2005. You see also in Pakistan what Ahmed Rashid had called the descent into chaos, but a lot of what was happening, and I know Hassan is going to talk in greater detail about this, but that first phase, 2002 to 2008, one in which, towards the end of it, our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told Congress that in Afghanistan we do what we can, in Iraq we do what we must. This period of not so benign neglect. I think if you look at 2009, essentially till 2011, it's a period of intensified resources and attention, not only on the part of the U.S., but of NATO allies, not only in terms of troops, but much more money and development assistance, and more political efforts. Similarly, across the border in Pakistan, you have an intensified effort on the U.S. side through strategic dialogue, through ongoing consultations with the security officials, much more time devoted, I think, to Pakistan and helping its government deal with its issues. So we're in this second phase. We're just past the midterm, I think, period in this 2009 to 2011. We're approaching it, and it's really, I think, a bit unclear in terms of progress or steps backwards. And I think the second phase is preparing us for what will be the third phase, which I think will be discussed much more at Lisbon, the preparation for a gradual transfer of authority in Afghanistan from 2011 to 2014. And I know everybody's been fixated on the summer 2011 timeline, but I think the discussions at Lisbon next week will further reaffirm that the full transfer of authority in Afghanistan is not likely to happen until 2014, and I think there's even some questions along those lines. So where are we? The picture is not very clear, and the results, I think, are mixed for a number of reasons. In Afghanistan, the conflict is quite complicated, and I think it belies the broad categories that framed our public debate last fall when the Obama administration was debating different options. The CT, counterterrorism versus COIN models, I think, left the impression that there was some sort of unified national strategy that we were looking at. And if you look at what actually has happened over the last year and a half, we have different military strategies, different overall strategies in different parts of the country. More or less a full-scale COIN effort in the southern part of the country in Helmand and Kandahar, which has more or less the prescribed troop-to-population ratio in place. Kandahar seems to be going a little bit better from a security standpoint than other places like Marja, and we've been apparently to have had some success against some of the Taliban from a security standpoint. In the east part of the country, and I think this is one feature that comes up in our news here and there was a very good Army Times article earlier this fall about this. There's been an intensified effort by the Joint Special Operations Command against the various networks here, and this may be closer to the counterterrorism model And in fact, there's a focused effort, particularly on the Haqqani network there. And in the north and west, we have in Kunduz, Mazar Sharif, Herat, what I think ISAF and others have labeled an economy of force operations, which there have been mixed results there, and in fact, some possible gains from the Taliban. So if you just read the newspaper headlines from the last week of October, we're in a confusing period. New York Times, October 20th. Coalition forces routing Taliban in key Afghan region. 3 days later, Washington Post, General Petraeus says progress is faster than expected in Afghanistan operations. And 4 days later, Washington Post again, U.S. military campaign to topple resilient Taliban has not succeeded. So we're in this, I think, phase where, again, we've applied more resources. Clearly, it's having some sort of impact. Gathering the data and assessing where we're at is a very difficult task for, I think, two main reasons. One, it's a complicated conflict in Afghanistan. And then two, I think there is an imperative on the part of some parts of some U.S. agencies to try to present progress as part of the overall effort to either set the table for some sort of negotiation here or to impact public opinion here back at home. But to sum up, in Afghanistan, and I'll turn to Pakistan briefly, I think overall we seem to be in a period where there is some impact. Obviously, when you put the finest military force on the ground in some places, but it's uncertain whether this is actually adding up to anything that will be sustainable in the long run. The special operations forces seem to be going well defined in terms of their narrow category or lane, but does this add up to sustainable security? That remains an open question. There's been some progress in training the security forces in Afghanistan, some steps towards achieving that goal, and as we know from Iraq, it's the surge of Afghan forces that matter, or local forces that matter a lot more than the enabling presence that foreign troops have. And some of the other issues in terms of reconciliation, we've had some talk towards that, but it remains an open question since there seems to be little political movement from President Karzai on some of the internal reforms. All of this, I think, paints a very mixed picture, and there's a separate question, which I think Paul will address, is what does this mean for U.S. national security interests, and do we have a balanced portfolio?